Make no mistake about it. If companies didn't need results, there wouldn't be any leadership jobs. The leader's job is to make sure you're calibrating to that middle 60, because that middle 60 is trying to decide which way you're going as a leader. That middle 60 is where you get the real leverage of.
Welcome to the Revenue Vault, the show where we go inside the minds of sales leaders building unstoppable revenue engines. Hey, I'm Mark Shan, CEO of Bentley Consulting, creator of the Revenue Engine OS. I help sales orgs scale with systems, not just hustle. Now, each week, I talk with CROs, VPs, and GTM leaders who aren't just hitting numbers. They're building machines that perform at scale. There's no fluff, there's no cliches, just real strategies that drive pipeline velocity and power. Today's guest is Scott Gibbs, Chief Revenue Officer at Meltwater, where he leads over 1,500 go-to-market pros across sales, CS, RevOps, and support. Scott's known for transforming high-velocity sales orgs into enterprise growth engines and doing the leadership style rooted in grit, trust, and care. In this episode, we unpack his middle 60% framework for shifting performance, how Meltwater is tackling churn, onboarding, cross-sell friction, the RevOps methodology mix that powers 27,000 accounts, and how coaching college basketball has shaped his leadership playbook. If you're building or leading a large go-to-market org, this one's for you. Let's dive in. Okay, so Scott, what's one thing that your revenue org is doing today that you believe puts it in the top 10%?
I mean, I would say there's just a commitment to getting better, a commitment to leaning into the process of grinding and getting better. Because I believe that as professionals, we really never arrive, but we also don't sit still. We either progress and get better, or we regress and get worse. So the commitment to craft, the commitment to developing ourselves, the commitment to really leaning in is something I love about my team at Meltwater, because we're not perfect. I'm not a perfect leader, but we're committed to grinding and working at it. And that's what I think. I actually think that would put anyone in the top 10%, those go-to-market orgs that have the most people grinding for the most hours in the day, the most days in the week, most weeks in the year, they're gonna be the best in class.
You know, and I love that, right? And I think it's really interesting, Scott, is especially like online today, there's this almost like fear or like this hustle culture of people say, oh, we don't want to grind, you know, it could be a bad thing. I mean, what would you have to say about people that have that belief around that?
I would just say you're just gonna have so much more fun in your career, because you got to go to work anyway.
Yeah,
most people do, and you're just gonna have so much more fun, like owning it, like just being 100% accountable within your locus of control, and just going out and trying to be the best you can be, and then letting the results take care of themselves, right? Because at the end of the day, the customers decide to give us the POs.
that's right.
The markets and the regulators and our competitors play into all of that. The only thing that we can really control is our effort, and the only ones that'll really know are ourselves. Like if you're looking in the mirror and saying, am I giving it my all? I think that's really peaceful and a lot of fun, and that's how I try to roll, and that's the leadership example I try to create or try to set.
I love that. How do you, as a CRO, right, and you have a pretty good-sized sales org, about how big is your overall sales org right now?
So at Meltwater, I lead our sales, customer success, partner ecosystem, services support, and of course RevOps, and that's roughly 1,500 professionals around the world.
Amazing.
The sellers and CS, which I would include our renewal team. We have a renewal management org as well. It's roughly 900 people.
Amazing. So leading such a large 1,500 person organization, how do you create that type of level of commitment to put the work in?
I will tell you, Marcus, to be honest, it's like swimming in an ocean.
I like the reference there.
Yeah, it's like swimming in an ocean, because leaders, we want to think that we have this influence and control over our teams. And I've kind of lost that notion quite a while ago. Yeah. Because ultimately the people decide. That each one of us decides how all in we are. And just to your point earlier, just a minute ago, about some people saying, hey, I don't really want to grind. Listen, like there's people on any team, there's people who wake up say, I want to grind. Doesn't matter who I'm working for. There's people who wake up in the morning and say, I don't want to grind. It doesn't matter who they're working for.
That's right.
The leader's job is to make sure you're calibrating to that middle 60. Because that middle 60 is trying to decide which way you're going as a leader.
That's right.
And so that middle 60 is where you get the real leverage of creating a culture of grinders, right? And that's always top of mind for me in terms of every leadership scenario that I have. And when I coach leaders, I have roughly 165 leaders. So when I coach leaders, I'm like, okay, what's your team makeup? Because it's usually 20, 20, 60. And you're playing for the 60 by listening to the 20.
That's it.
Right? Because if the top 20 says I need a ping pong table in the cafeteria, I'm going to do it. But if somebody else says I need a ping pong table in the cafeteria, I'm not going to listen, because that middle 60 is saying, oh, I'm staying quiet.
That's right.
And somebody complain, I'll start complaining. So as a leader, that's probably one of the bigger leverage points that I've learned over the years. Like, I didn't have it down the way I'm saying it now until a few years ago. So I've kind of acquired that thought, and I think it works. I think it works.
You know, what's interesting is I love that. 'Cause I've actually had a very similar mentality where it's like we had the 20, 60, 20, right? The top 20%, the middle 60, the bottom 20, right? And when you can understand, like, hey, as a leader, how can we raise the average across the board? Move that middle 60 to make, because that 20%, they're already waking up. They're already wired a certain way. Obviously, we wish we had more of them, right? The bottom 20, I mean, you can do your best, but sometimes, like, you can give them the tools, the training, the resources. They're just not going to do it, you know? But that middle 60, if we can move them and just raise the median up, that's where we can make some big leverage.
Yeah, and that's the fun. That's the fun. As a leader, that's what that's just what I love, is just seeing that broader progression of my teams get to that point where they're just all in, they're committed, they're accountable, and they don't care what the results are, because they know that their efforts are going to enable them to let the results take care of themselves.
That's right. It's when they trust in the process and they do the right work consistently, it's amazing what happens in the long run. Now, and I love it, just your approach, right? So what's something about your approach to sales leadership that might be different from maybe others you've worked with or maybe have observed?
I'm going to approach that question with all due humility, because I don't necessarily compare myself to other leaders. I will say I got into leadership so I could guarantee myself that there would be one less jerk in leadership. Okay, so I will say that, right?
I do love that.
but beyond that, I try to lead the way that it feels correct to me. And that's around my leadership values that are very personal to me, and a set of leadership principles that are the language and the blueprint of a leadership system in a large organization, right? Principles are not negotiable for leaders in my orgs, right? We all speak the same language. Things like disagree and commit. Leaders are efficient. Listen and communicate clearly. Make good decisions. Those are principles. Values are more personal. And I think they're born and they grow and they change out of your leadership experiences. But values help you stay grounded when things get elevated on you, which if you're in the arena, you're feeling that almost every day. So that's kind of my anchoring approach, Marcus.
I love it, right? And I mean, when I look at your background, it's very impressive, right? I mean, you led orgs at Cisco, Nortel, at Tableau, I mean, to now at Meltwater. And I think this aligns to the principles piece, but what's maybe one belief you hold about leading sales organizations that most people maybe disagree with?
Again, I think that's a question that I'm not going to take a swipe at seeing if somebody agrees with it or disagrees with it. Okay, all due respect to the question, because I think it's a very good question.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk like revenue mechanics and stuff, and we'll do that, I'm sure. Yep. Leadership-wise, I beat to my own drum. And my beliefs in terms of the teams that I lead are that we never stay still. That every professional is going to get better or going to get worse. And it's my job to find you, to develop you, to hold you accountable, to make sure that you don't make excuses, to make sure that your ego doesn't get in your way, so that you can achieve greatness. That's my goal for everybody I lead. Because if we can just hold ourselves 100% accountable, dig into the process, really, really grind on the process, greatness resides in determination, then we're going to get better, right? And as you scale leadership situations where your individual contribution has a little bit less impact,
That's right.
it becomes really important to have a strong platform of expectation. And my expectations of my teams are that leaders exist to get results. So leaders exist to get business results. Like, make no mistake about it. If companies didn't need results, there wouldn't be any leadership jobs, right? So then, okay, how do we go about getting them? We go about getting them by not talking about them, but working the process that gets them, right? And so there's a commitment to results. There's an accountability to results, but there's a process that doesn't obsess over results that I believe and personally experience, like, it frees me to be the best professional I can be. And I think it frees leaders up. It also frees all roles in these types of organizations, Marcus, right? Should just be the best they can be. It's really and put that maximum effort in. And to the extent that all leaders don't believe in that, I would say maybe I'm doing something different. But that's my answer.
You know, I love that. I've always had a firm belief that everyone can always get better, right? And yes, certain people can only get so good, right? But by bringing them in, they maybe end up being a C player. How can I make them a B player? If they're a B, how can I give them an A? If they're an A already, great. How can I make them A plus and multiply across the org? Yeah. And I love that belief because it's that same philosophy of, Tony Robbins called it CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. So I've always loved that frame.
I love that.
Very simple. It's like, hey, we should always have the mindset of CANI, constant and never-ending improvement, right?
If it was a lesser-known person that said that, I would expect you to take credit for that.
Exactly. I borrow shamelessly, but I credit where I got it from.
There's
right?
no new ideas in business and basketball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now tactically, right? Because we have CROs listen to this, sales VPs, other sales execs, and they're like, that sounds great, but what's maybe one tactical way of helping implement this in your org to drive that, to make sure that everyone's kind of aligned to that?
So now there's like mechanics, right? Yeah. And there's a sequence of things that you need to bring a leadership style alive, right? And actually get the results. And I would say, like, the number one thing is pipeline, right? Like, so at Meltwater, when I came in, we grew up, lots of young people hired and selling to small businesses around the world, hire in a city, grow, hire. And those days were over when I got here. So it becomes about, okay, how do you get growth through efficiency, right? And then you start to look at the mechanics. And the first thing you need to do is have a way to consistently build pipeline and understand your win rates, understand your market fit. And all of those things are always imperfect circumstances.
That's right. There's
never enough product. There's never enough wonderful customers. Nobody is going to love you altogether, right? So you have to have some frameworks in place. So pipeline is the number one framework, right? And based on your win rates and your markets, you need to generate a certain amount of pipeline. And that was one of my biggest challenges at Meltwater, because we had a down market business and an accidental enterprise business, and my charter is make a purposeful enterprise business and lift everything. And pipeline is the first thing, and commitment to pipeline, and then at first is top down. Pipeline Tuesdays, we're all doing it.
Yep.
This is your structure. When you get rolling on it, then it gets really good. Like for us, we need to generate 13. Let's just call it 15 million. I don't want to give you the low range because my team's going to be listening to it.
No
but
worries.
we need to generate 15 million a week.
Yep.
And we have about 20% win rate. So we need our deal scores. Like, you need deal scores. So you need pipeline first, then you need deal scores.
That's right.
And you need a methodology, right? You need a sales methodology. At Meltwater, we did it spiced,
Yep.
right? Winning by design.
Yep.
And then we integrated Medic as well, because I feel like those working together is a good combination.
Yep.
And we score our deals now.
Good.
And champion economic buyer, decision criteria, executive interlock. We know when we get those, we win. But I also know that we're not getting it universally because our win rate's not 80%, it's 20%. So, real time, trying to crank up the win rate and focus on that. And then within the methodology, there's two kind of big themes that I think are really important for sellers and CSMs as well. One is you have to really understand the customer's business problem, and you have to compel them to leave the status quo based on a match with your solution. That's what everybody says, and that's where we get all the FUD and all that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
The quarter end incentives and all that's great, right? But what really is the other piece is the anxiety of a customer when they have to make a decision.
That's right.
Right. So if we know, hey, we've gotten them to break the status quo, we also have to get them over their fear of messing up. Right. And like just great book on that is Jolt. Like you probably know that, right? So great book on that. Live it, read it. If any reps are out there, man, it's just so. It's like should be a Bible. That's right. So you got the methodologies don't really like draw that out because it's emotional.
Correct.
Right. So there's the tactical, then there's emotional.
That's right.
And as sellers and as customer facing roles, we have to be great at both.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, and you're so spot on, right? And what I loved about Jolt, they talk about the omission bias, which for those listening and watching, that means majority of buyers they're scared to make a decision because they're more worried about making the wrong decision than making a decision and being the right decision. So they become inactive, right? So that's why it's so key for sellers, leaders to help them de-risk the deal and help them de-risk it internally in their buying committee. So this way they feel safe making that decision. So there's that emotional component that oftentimes some methodologies kind of miss out on, right? So I think it's really, really powerful. So for you, and the really cool part, because you manage really cold to really upsold, if you will, all the way through, right?
Yeah, and he's just a tremendous author, and the Challenger Sales, another.
Yep, Matthew Dixon.
Matt. Yeah. I'm not here to plug Matt's book, but I would say, just like anybody in the trade, I've read too many books to remember about our craft.
Yeah.
But those two are the best I see seller books that I've ever read, for what it's worth.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Great books. Highly recommend. Especially even the Challenger Customer. I mean, the whole series, it just helps you understand at a different lens across the board, from seller to the buyer, the buying committee, right? And to even the customers. So I love that. So as you look at
I think you have a whole bunch of framework stuff that you got beyond that, but those things I just mentioned are pretty fundamental elements.
So if you look at your org right now, if you had a name like one constraint, because you get to see the whole org, right? If saw would unlock the most growth in your sales org, what do you think it would be?
Are you asking me like a leading measure question or an actually output, like more bookings, better GRR?
However you want to interpret it, yeah.
Okay, I'll start from the result in.
Cool.
Right? We need to sell more and churn less. How about that?
That's fair.
Right?
I like that.
Yeah, and so there's hundreds of activities that over 1,000 people take every day to help us with that, and including my colleagues in dev and product who I enjoyed at multiple different companies, like great horizontal relationships. That's a big piece of my leadership platform is horizontal collaboration cross-functionally. But I think that when at Meltwater, we're really good at acquiring customers. And that is a great strength. We have great velocity sales, and we have a great selling system that was in place before I got here to do that. I think my work at Meltwater is how do we take that and provide an incredible client experience, right? So first client experience of onboarding, it's kind of like when you walk into a certain hotel in the lobby, you just know you're going to stay there again, right? So I think that can be accomplished with onboarding. And then fixing things fast when they break, right? So how do we fix things fast when we have problems, right? And then how do we just have a really unified customer journey? And when you focus on those leading measures, your retention gets better. But what also happens is you can play chess with your upsells, right? So you can get price increases on renewal.
That's right.
You can get horizontal leverage within an account so that you can go sell a different buying center that is within your ICP, but maybe not your primary business. In our case, PR and comms to marketing to AI to consumer insights. Those are our kind of horizontal leverage points. But if we don't do a good job on the land, we're not going to get the expand. So it's really about all of the mechanics that go into creating a great customer experience that I am laser focused on grinding with. And it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work, but that's what makes it great.
Now, it's really interesting you bring that up. I think that's a great point, right? Because you're talking about the CX, the customer experience, if you will. And in this point here, you kind of hit a couple of different areas, right? Where it sounds like it's almost like even before they become a customer, so part of that journey as a buyer, to when they actually get onboarded, to even past that. So if you had to pick one area to focus on, which would you focus on to improve the experience the most?
They're all important, right? But
Totally.
but I believe that the onboarding experience is one of the most underrated and opportunities, at least in my current leadership role. Because I'm not saying that it would, for your listeners, it would make a big difference maybe in what they're facing, but for us, and there is some common sense to it, but having that first client experience be awesome, right? And that the customer feels confident in what they did. Because if you get back to the Jolt book, there's a lot of material in there that has that post-PO anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So we want to have that post-PO confidence built, and that they're confident in the platform and they know they're with a company that is going to continuously get better. And that the subscription term was worth it because it looks really good today on the onboarding. And I know this company has their act together, so they're going to keep getting better. That's really what we want to instill in our teams so that they pass that on to the customers. And really at Meltwater, everything we do, our R&D, our code writing, and then our field motions, we want to build around that.
I love that. I love that focus right there, right? Because this is how you determine their true LTV is once they come on board. Because they remember that first experience, right? So when you look at the onboarding, what's kind of happening now? It's like, ooh, there's some opportunity here. And what are the plans you're kind of thinking about implementing, or you're starting to implement now to improve that experience?
Yeah, so it's great because I'm right on this now.
Yeah.
And we reorged our business so that we had, and I inherited, and I left it in place to see how it would go, a centralized onboarding team at Meltwater that was in the support organization. And what I grew to find was that it really needs to be in customer success, right? And it needs to be close to the customer, in region, in segment. And so that is all part of the customer journey. So we've done that at Meltwater, and I would expect dramatic improvements. And so that's one thing, org design, closer to the customer, deeper within the customer journey. Second is we're infusing a lot, not just Meltwater, who is in fact an AI company, but we're infusing a lot of generative AI into business processes now. And it's no different for us, right? So how can we be more efficient? How can we make it easier for the customer to get confident? And what kind of templates and tools can we build that are easy self-service for the customer? Not necessarily to offload it from us, but more so to give them confidence that hey, this is a platform I can use. This is a platform I can leverage. This is a platform that's fun to use, the outputs that we get. And that, I think that's a big part of it. So that's where the leverage points are. Org, process, tooling is how we're attacking it.
I love that. And what role, because I always think about this, right? Because I'm sure you've seen this from your level. You have a great salesperson, they sell the deal, and then it gets basically handed off. And then as the customer's getting onboarded, someone say, oh, this is not what I expected. This is I was told this, I was promised this. Has that showed up in Meltwater's world? And have you guys found a way to kind of ease that transition, if you will?
So the answer is absolutely yes. And I think that's a very common thing in SaaS, because the folks that are selling the deal, man, they're great at demoing.
Yeah.
Right. And so they orchestrate a beautiful demo and a high impact I'm gonna get you out of status quo, and I'm gonna hold your hand all the way through.
Right.
And then the customer has to use it, and it's not the same experience. So there's a little bit of freak out, and we're not immune to that.
Yeah.
And by the way, we weren't immune to it at Tableau either, and that was probably one of the best customer love stories that you could ever imagine, right? But we weren't immune to it there either. I think that's a thing that you need to leverage within onboarding to to kind of over-index there. Also, you got to keep making your products better.
Yeah.
Right. And so at Meltwater, I think in the era of generative AI, everybody's product is everybody in SaaS is either going to be disrupted, run away from disruption, or the one way to do that is make your product better all the time. Make your user experience, that much better. Otherwise, disruption will catch up with you.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, right? Because I think you definitely leverage AI, and I think there's also like the human element, right? And I remember when I was running a pretty large org, we had this issue as well where, you get the handoff, it's complaints, and things just happen on the back end. So we started creating what we called a transition of trust, right? That was the framing we had. It was actually an actual meeting where it was the sales professional with the CS team, with the customer, and there was a whole checklist that actually I went through, because it was like all the common issues in the back end when people wouldn't renew, the customer complaints, and all this. Like, hey, how can we address it up front? Have a checklist that the salesperson says, hey, you remember we said this? This is what you get. You said this is what you get. You said this, this is what you get. So there was an alignment across the board, and everyone saw. The CS team saw, the reps saw, the customers saw, they all agreed. And we actually had them sign this thing as well to say, hey, everyone was like covered in the onboarding, right?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it was like, well,
transition of trust. Is that what you
called the transition of trust?
Right? I wrote that down. Taking that.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
Steal shamelessly. So that was an actual meeting. So this way, it wasn't like they signed the DocuSign and see you later, never hear from the rep again, except from an email or they try to get upsells. But like it was part of that, right? And then as an org for the different teams, each week we'd have the operational team, the general manager with the CS team and the sales leader and the rep. They would go through how each transition and trust went to make sure there's a cadence of accountability across the board. Because we knew on the back end, we could sell 2, 3, 5x more into that account through our account managers as part of it, right? And also the high renewal rate, the LTV went up, churn went down, complaints. I mean, it was just like way better because there was no he said, she said thing, right? But then on top of that, what was really interesting was we also, their comp structure was tied to it too. So if there was churn within the first 6 months in usage or volume, it actually would impact the compensation and the President's Club requirements and numbers towards that rep. So
that's great. We're right in the planning cycle, so this is really good. I think what you're teaching me here is, so we have joint impact plans that we do with customers, but they're not during the onboarding process. They're kind of after.
Sure.
Right. And I like one of the things I'm going to stretch to, based on what you're giving me is like at onboarding, like that should in effect be like a stage 0 of a joint impact plan. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Like this is what we committed. Check. Oh, yeah. Let's move into joint impact plan and have that cadence. I think that's a good idea because again, I think we can index on that first client experience.
That's right.
And create lots of momentum and confidence.
Oh yeah. We used to do, not to get too wild into, we actually use it as not just that piece to get more. I started to evolve over time. We use it as first was purely almost like a way to be proactive in a typically reactive situation. And then we started to build in like ways to include like demos or offerings or upsells services as part of the onboarding plan. But in a way where it didn't feel like sleazy. It's like, hey, because you're a new customer, we're going to give you premium access for 3 months at no cost to you, just to thank you. And they're like, amazing. Like, yeah. And what happens when they enjoy it for 3 months? Guess what? They want to keep it after that, right? Or like we had a high percentage of retaining that. So we had this very strategic way of making sure expectations are really aligned, and then literally using it as a way as a future upsell. And worst case scenario, they don't want it down the road. No problem. They're just happy they got something for free at no extra cost to them. Yeah. So now the NPS scores are going up. Okay, churn is going down. It was like a win across the board. If you structure onboarding as a way to be revenue generating.
So, I really like that. Yeah. That's good ideas.
That's like phase 2, if you will. That's phase 2, Now going back to your team, what's maybe an invisible tax your team is paying right now? It doesn't show up on the dashboard, but you're like, oh, this is definitely dragging performance down.
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest thing that is visible, right, is churn, right, and customer client experience, because the new logo teams, they really get after it and they land the business, and notwithstanding transition of trust, then they go away and they go get the next one.
Yeah.
The churn and the customer experience impacts those named reps, those account managers. And those reps are, at least at Meltwater and certainly at Tableau, they are the more senior skilled reps, because they have to deal with the co-term, the reterm, the pull forwards, the upsells. They have to make sure that the waters stay calm so they can sell more. And the real tax comes on them. The hidden tax is all of the details of the customer journey where we make unforced errors. We maybe not bill the customer the right way. Like, we're just implementing CPQ, right? So we've done it. We had the typical hiccups. It's my third time around the track with CPQ. It went really well. The team did a great job. But, you bill wrong, then you have to rebill, right? You auto-renew someone without getting their full permission.
Like full conversation.
Yeah, full conversation.
Right.
You don't checkpoint with them like, hey, if I asked you today, Marcus, would you renew with us? You don't checkpoint with them. There's 1,000 little details in that customer journey, well more granular than what we've been talking about, that collectively create a significant tax on upsell and cross-sell, right? And so, and then, most named reps, they make money on ACV. And ACV is new ARR minus old ARR. So if customers swap or customers churn, there's no comp, and they're paying that tax. So we have a real problem in the business. I think certainly it's my biggest problem at Meltwater is that cross-sell leverage in those underlying little taxes that add up to a big tax. They're difficult because our most seasoned reps, like through the craft, our most seasoned reps have to be those who know how to sell in the book. Right? And if you're struggling with GRR and there's all these underlying situations, you're not going to sell more. So for me, it's a pressing thing to fix in all little pieces of that chain, because my best reps are selling in the book, right? And or not my best per se, but my most experienced. Right? Because we got great reps all over. It doesn't, great reps are not confined to the book. But, in our business, typically, the most seasoned and experienced reps are selling in the book, right? I mean, so.
Yeah, I call it like the death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's like it's just a bunch of little things that kind of add up. And I think it's a good point, right? Because you can really protect the house, if you will, if they're doing a really good job while increasing the net ACV. So what are maybe some things, you're doing or thinking about doing to help drive that, to really improve and mitigate some of these invisible taxes?
Yeah, so we're looking at every leading measure that we can find to a great customer experience. And so, because great customer experience, again, sets the stage for upsell. So on all levels, how much outbound are our CSMs doing, how much demo. We just launched an AI layer called Mira, and we have, we've entitled our more advanced packages with Mira, but our legacy packages are not entitled with Mira. So, we have a lot to migrate. So how is the outbound? How's the demo? And those tactical things, it does start with a go-to-market mission. And at Meltwater, our go-to-market mission is to help communicators and marketers reach their full potential. It's simple but powerful. But as we know, marketers and communicators, they move around a lot. So we want to have a personal relationship with those people. So that no matter where they go, we're top of mind for them in terms of those types of solutions that they buy from us or our competitors. So really having a commitment at a mission level that, do we want results? Do we want to make money? Of course we do. But that's born out of a sincere desire to help our customers be successful. So that's one piece. The second piece are the mechanics and the training, because prospecting is in the book. It's fundamentally different than prospecting to targets and new logos. Prospecting in the book is lots of outbound about, hey Marcus, what are your problems? What are your business problems? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And really learning where the pain is, and doing enough outbound to find a match with our solution and your pain. And that the waters are quiet enough in the relationship so that we could successfully have that open dialogue. Because if we're not doing well, you're not going to tell me, right? And so with those mechanics, you have to have really good territory construction. So in any book, you're going to have your A list, like these are accounts that love you and they're going to buy more from you. You have accounts that on the opposite end, they don't like you and they're probably going to churn, right? And then there's they love you, they don't have a lot of needs to go horizontal with you within the account, but they recognize your value and you can renew with a price increase, right? Because maybe you landed them low and you can renew them and they understand and they're happy to pay. And then there's accounts that you're going to renew at even money, right? So with a book of 27,000 customers, I want to know where all those customers are in the quadrants, right? And then 100%. You have different tactics with those customers in different plays. So you have horizontal plays, which are, hey, we're going to go from product A to product B, upsell. Vertical plays, upsell. And then you have horizontal plays of, hey, they love us in PR and comms. Let's get the influencer marketing. Let's understand our white space in the accounts, and let's get every customer on a map, right? And that's where having a strong RevOps team, which I do, and I coach them really hard, and I'll shout them out because they really get after it. They're good quants, and they practice. And so we have this there, and we kind of know what our play is for each customer, and we know what our plays are at a product level. We got to get a lot better, right? It sounds, as I say it, I feel like I'm making it sound better than we really are, because we have to get better. But that's the way we're approaching it.
I love that. And to be specific, right? I think it's a great approach, because it builds off the CX we talked about as part of it, right? Now, are these CSMs doing that outreach, or is it the named account executives doing the outreach?
We have a pod. We have a pod structure. So we have renewal managers. We have CSM, CSEs, mid-market or enterprise, and we have account managers or named AEs. Just typical hierarchy, right? And we have a pod structure. In those pods, they work together and they find their zone. That was a new thing that I brought to Meltwater, and it's made us a lot more efficient. And now we're really starting to get that collaboration at street level. And it really happens, it really works well. We need a renewal management operation because we do like almost 50,000 renewals a year. And so, we're working on consolidating, co-terming our book and making it more rational, and parent-child mapping and all those types of hygiene things that you would do. But that's a really, like, the velocity of our renewals requirements and it is a big deal here. So we have this pod, and that's how we get after it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a really good strategy across the board, right? For obviously reducing churn, right, and also growing up selling accounts. Now we're gonna kind of pivot a little bit, right, as we kind of go towards the end of this interview. But what's maybe one tactical move you borrowed or stole shamelessly from another company or leader that you still use today?
I will tell you, I've stolen leadership lessons from coaches, college basketball coaches.
Love it.
That I've taken shamelessly. And I've been coaching basketball for 20 years. And college basketball, I'm in my 10th season as a volunteer assistant at Drew University, Division III school in New Jersey. And that's going to be my retirement career when I, move on. I would say the opportunity that's given me is to like learn lessons and steal philosophies or even sayings, and living in leadership during basketball season like 24/7, because you take leadership lessons from the workplace, you bring them to the court,
That's right.
you take them from the court, bring them to the office, right? And it's very humbling, because when you're coaching athletes, you're giving them a lot of feedback about what they're doing. And the younger the athlete, like I've gone from middle school to college, right? College more of a partnership. Middle school, it's more of a, and high school, it's more of a, you have to listen to me. Right?
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. And the one thing that, like feedback, listen to feedback, lean into feedback, ignore criticism. Criticism is personal.
Yeah.
It's about who you are.
Yeah.
Feedback's about what you're doing. And I've learned a lot about myself, where I'm asking players to take feedback, and then it makes me look in the mirror and say, hey, like, how's my feedback recipient quotient, if you will? And I think that's helped myself be more humble, less defensive over the years in regards to the feedback, just by doing that. There's a couple of things there's one big theme that I've stolen from a college basketball coach, and I learned it from a particular individual, but it's an adage in coaching, which is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's a fundamental leadership value of mine.
100%.
Where you're trying to execute transformation, help somebody get better, deliver a tough message. You have to constantly work on the care factor all the time. You have to feed the care factor all the time. So when those moments of tension come in, you've built enough trust to come from where the recipient knows you're coming from a place of love and caring, right? Versus criticism and personal attack. And you can get through those human defenses to help them achieve greatness.
I love that so much. And I always imagine it's like, trust with your people and your team is like a bank account, right? If you're constantly doing withdrawals, you're going to overdraft your account. But if you truly show by doing deposits consistently, then you can do withdrawals over time by having that type of tougher feedback. So I love that. Amazing interview, Scott. Where can people find you and learn more about Meltwater?
I mean, you can hit me up on LinkedIn, of course, DM me. And that's probably the best way to do it. Happy to talk to anybody. And look me up there.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you, Marcus. Appreciate it.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Revenue Vault. Now, if you got value, here's your next step. Go to vendlingconsulting.com/teams, get a free performance scan of your sales org. We'll show exactly where deals are still and how to actually fix it. And if this episode gave you even one insight worth sharing, send it to a sales leader you respect. I'm Marcus Shannon. Thanks for being in the room.